Welcome back to the Bitcoin Layer. I'm Nick Bhatia, and today we have Voltage founder and CEO Graham Krizek. Graham, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Nick. Excited.
So, Graham, tell us quickly about Voltage, the origin story, what you guys do, and what you're here for.
Yeah, for sure. We originally started as a really just trying to solve the problems that exist in Bitcoin at that infrastructure layer. And so my background has always been in like software engineering, a lot of cloud computing work. And I've been in Bitcoin since about 2012. And I have been contributing in like open source tech and like all of the things around Bitcoin for a while. And then one day I was just like, I want to go into this full time. I really want to work on this in a more serious context. And so really was evaluating what are the needs in the space, what are things that I can contribute to, how can I add more value than just doing maybe some open source contributions. And I saw the Lightning Network was at the time this really obvious like thing that's going to come to Bitcoin and really change the game, enable much more use cases, do a lot more for it. And I was like, cool, this sounds great. And I tried to like use the Lightning Network. This was even before like Umbrels or Start9s or any of those like at home devices. I was trying to get like LND to run on a Raspberry Pi at home, and it was just like it was so horrible. It was such a challenge to get anything to work. And so it was kind of like, I wish that I had like a service that I could just go and like spin up a node on and have it just work, and then be able to start play with it from there. So that was kind of the idea for the business of Voltage. And so I wrote the platform to do that, launched it, have scaled since then, and we've like really expanded the product into not just the infrastructure of node hosting, but we also do things of like liquidity management, helping people get connectivity into the greater network, as well as insights and actionable material out of your node of like analyzing transactions, viewing your channels, all of those things. So we're really creating a full service platform that lets businesses integrate Lightning into what they're doing very, very quickly without having to start from ground zero every time. And we're also very, very focused on the Lightning Network, like more natively, and that we, the products and services that we offer, you have real UTXOs, you have real channels that is your node, like you get, your seed phrase, all of those things. So it's very true to the protocol itself. And it's not some abstraction where we kind of offer you like an API on top. It's like, no, you get all of that raw access into the protocol.
And talk about the Lightning Network and its position right now. So we have public metrics such as total Bitcoin in the Lightning Network. We've seen nice and steady growth above 5,000 Bitcoin. Maybe you can give us the latest numbers there. But what other qualitative or quantitative metrics are you looking at to measure Lightning Network adoption as it stands today and the direction that it has gone maybe the last 6 months or so?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And it's semi-challenging in that, everyone likes like the public metrics we have on the Lightning Network are like, node count, channel capacity. Those are the ones that are like referenced the most often, which is like mostly the most public data that we have on it, which is very different than like a layer one, even in Bitcoin or anything, where you can see every transaction, hey, Bitcoin layer one is doing $1 trillion or whatever. You can see that much more easily. In Lightning, it's much more private, which is a benefit of the protocol itself. But people try and quantify like, okay, how's it doing? How is adoption growing? How is all those things? How is it progressing as a network? And the good pieces that come out of that, or being able to evaluate that, are more on like who is using it, who is adopting it, how much are they using it, what is the volumes like, and those are naturally much more private information. So it's hard to extrapolate, broadly speaking, how is the network doing in those metrics? But what I can say is there's a lot of interest across the board in terms of like Lightning, both from like existing Bitcoin businesses that are already transacting maybe in Bitcoin layer one, and especially today in like the high fee environment, we've seen a rush of people that are trying to add Lightning into their products and services because it helps them, cut costs, be more efficient, really have a much more stable experience inside of a high fee environment. So we see a lot of existing Bitcoin companies coming to Lightning because it's the time, it's this high fee environment that is sort of created for in a way. Then additionally, we see a lot of people inside of like traditional fintech that are coming to the protocol to like really they see the values that it possesses of this instant settlement, these near zero transaction fees, and this global network. and they see that as a way that they can leverage it to optimize their existing business practices. So when we think about adoption, how is it going? I think that we see those like public metrics going up, which is fantastic, but I think there's so much more going on behind the scenes that are not as easily visible inside of those public metrics, where we see a lot of people coming to the protocol for different angles, for different reasons. But we have seen that inside of our business, where a lot of people are very, very interested in bringing in the technology into what they're doing, and I see that as like the biggest catalyst for growth, and like the best kind of metric we have today, as far as like who is using it, who is coming to it, and that has grown even more steadily than like the capacity itself. We've seen like some really large companies start to adopt it over the last like year or 2 years. So I think that that's a really good sentiment to like track, like, okay, is anyone using this? And it's like, obviously yes, right?
So as usage grows and interest grows, demand grows for Lightning Network products, I would just quickly ask you to put on your adversarial thinking cap. What are you looking at in terms of risks to Lightning Network itself, or risks to Lightning Network being the chosen layer 2 of Bitcoin, which it has appeared that the industry has coalesced around Lightning Network in the last 3 years or so. It's very obvious to everyone, but put on your adversarial thinking cap for us. What do you see out on the horizon as the CEO of a Lightning Network company?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that so the things that I see is like in something that we work with customers on is like the Lightning Network is very different than like any other layer 1 or any other protocol in terms of like you have to have like these liquidity channels, you have to have like an always on node, and like all these different things. And so it's very challenging for someone that has no idea about any of it coming to this technology and just starting to use it. And so that's something we are working on from like a product perspective, is making that a lot easier. But thinking in that adversarial way, I see that as a big challenge of that. If we are not able to service a lot of the influx of people that are coming to Lightning, and it's like just still too hard, we'll have all of these UX problems like figured out, then they're either going to leave, or we're going to go just so far custodial inside of it that it like negates all of the benefits that come with Bitcoin and the Lightning Network itself. So I think that that's an issue that we are working through, like us at Voltage, and a lot of other folks are really trying to make the UX of Lightning much simpler. And there's more to do there, and we're really excited about some of the things that we're working on for it. But ultimately, if we can't solve that, people are either going to leave or they're going to go custodial, and like that's that just completely wipes out the benefits there. And so I see that as a big one. And then I think also you kind of made a point on layer 2s inside of Bitcoin. Well, and like there's been some other protocols or other things like inside of like Fedimints or like Arc that was like recently announced of like, okay, how does Lightning compare to that? And like I'm of the opinion of, I see the layer 2 systems inside of Lightning being like all of them. I think that all of them are going to operate. They're all interoperable. You can pay a Lightning invoice out of Fedimint. Arc and Lightning are supposedly going to be compatible like when that comes out. And so I see that as it being, I think ultimately it's going to be this big mix of like all of these different layer 2s. I think that Lightning is going to be the kind of the backbone of all of them, and like these pockets kind of use it to transact. So I think in terms of is it going to be the dominant layer 2 of Bitcoin? I think so. I'm of the opinion that it is. And I think that all of these other layer 2s are going to exist, but they're going to be interoperable with this like main backbone that goes into, Lightning and Bitcoin.
Can you explain it to me like I'm 5, what ARC is?
I'm even struggling with that too. I tried to listen to he was on Stefan Livera, I think a couple weeks ago or something, and so I'm still parsing that what it is, but it's essentially like a layer 2 protocol similar to Lightning, but it has some benefits where you don't have to have direct liquidity established to other peers. There's more of a central service provider that can essentially provide liquidity to all of the users, and there's also if some changes happen to Bitcoin, the protocol, there will also be a level of like non-interactivity where you don't always have to have an online server to transact. And so ultimately, it's very similar to Lightning. There's some like there's some changes to the protocol that remove some of those UX burdens. Barack, the person that kind of came up with the idea for ARC, he basically made it in direct attempt to solve some of those burdens of like liquidity and interactivity. So very similar. And but there's some trade-offs there, and it's also like to get the full experience of Arc as it's promised, there needs to be some soft works to Bitcoin Core or Bitcoin Protocol to make that happen. And so I think it'll be a little while before we see that truly in the wild.
Thank you for that explanation. And it's just for the audience, looking at Lightning Network and the promise of Lightning Network, well, there's other development going on around Bitcoin within Lightning Network, and even some competitors to Lightning Network now popping up after the success and maybe some of the UX burden. So important to keep our eye on all that. And we can rely on high quality Lightning Network infrastructure companies like Voltage to give us a sense of what's going on in the cutting edge. So Graham is telling us this is not an issue for today, but more something that we have to keep our eye on. Now, Graham, you guys announced, or there was an announcement recently that was very exciting to a lot of people in Bitcoin and Lightning Network. It was the Google Cloud account on Twitter retweeting the Voltage product here. So can you tell us about what that announcement was and what's going on with Google Cloud?
Yeah, definitely. So we started doing a partnership with Google Cloud, which is Voltage, like running infrastructure inside of Google Cloud. So we have a lot of customers that the larger enterprise level customers, they have specific requirements on what they need, whether it's the cloud provider that they need their deployments ran in, or geographical region of like the UK or Asia, or specific areas around the world. And so we are leveraging Google Cloud to service those types of requests of being able to deploy infrastructure to Google Cloud and go global as a platform with Google Cloud. And then additionally, we're doing a lot with Google Cloud as far as they have some like blockchain services, and we're servicing them inside of being kind of like the go-to Bitcoin partner for helping customers that are interested in Bitcoin. And they have a Web3 accelerator that we're working on getting involved in as a provider for people that are going through that and want to experience Bitcoin and Lightning. So there's a lot more to come on that. Actually, we're going to be doing more integrations, more partnerships with Google as we move along. But ultimately, we are working with Google Cloud to go global as a platform, get Lightning nodes across the world, and then also be a provider to anyone inside of Google or like going through their Google programs and want to learn about Bitcoin and Lightning.
Now, you guys are serving Bitcoin companies and then companies that are not exclusively Bitcoin companies, but more financial companies that are involved with technology or technological solutions for their clients. So let's start with the Bitcoin companies that you serve. What products are you providing for them? And you mentioned this rush in the latest fee spike environment in which a lot of people said, we need to make sure we have our Lightning Network strategy set. But maybe the companies that have been with you for a while, what do you do for them?
Yep, great question. So what we do is we have several different products and services that each customer kind of touches like in different ways, but ultimately we provide the infrastructure. So that's like the node hosting, being able to have your node online, doing the backups, the networking, all the things that no one really wants to deal with. We handle all that for customers, and so they're able to just have a node and be able to transact through the node without having to worry about any of the back end things. We also have launched an LSP, so a liquidity service provider. So being able to provide liquidity with those payment channels into our customers and help them transact into the network much easier without having to worry about, hey, I need to make sure I have all of these channels established across the board. And then finally, we have like an observability tool that we're launching really, really soon called Surge. And that's a way of getting more operational awareness around what's happening inside of your node. So being able to view your transactions, do accounting on those transactions, look at your channel balances, get alerted of issues, all of the things that teams need to actually to kind of operate inside of the Lightning Network. And so all of those things combined, and we also offer some like managed service aspects of it where we can help people operate. So ultimately, what we do for customers is we help them just plug in the Lightning Network into what they're doing. And that's everything from, gaming to, fintech to exchanges. Like it's kind of very across the board in terms of how we interact. But we want to be the go-to, Lightning provider. So you don't have to go hire an engineering team to go and set up a Lightning deployment and manage the whole node and all these things. We do that for you, so you can focus on your product and just like integrate Lightning into what you're already doing or your existing products and services.
The Bitcoin Layer is sponsored by Envoy. Envoy is an easy-to-use Bitcoin mobile wallet with powerful account management and privacy features. Take it from me, you guys. I set this thing up in 60 seconds, and you can too. You can set it up in 60 seconds, forget about it, and enjoy the Zen-like experience of having your Bitcoin totally off exchanges. Not to mention, this thing backups your keys and encrypts them, so you don't have to worry about that either. You can download it for free on Google Play and the App Store right now.
And now talk to me about the broader fintech industry. What is the research and development that you're doing there specifically to build products for companies that don't really know what to do on a Bitcoin strategy level whatsoever? And are you coming in them and telling them, teaching them that Lightning Network needs to be at first principles when approaching the strategy to Bitcoin integration? And what can you share about the type of client that you're working with?
Yeah, definitely. So we definitely have we've seen an increase over the last like 6 months really of, more traditional fintech companies that are coming to us that are trying to understand like how can we apply Bitcoin and Lightning, to what we're doing. And to the credit of like Strike, they've kind of made this idea of like using Bitcoin as this like global settlement layer. They did it inside of their own products, and there's a lot of people that are like, hey, we want to do that. Like we see that as a great use case. And so we see a lot of traditional fintechs come to us, and some of them are interested in Bitcoin. They like Bitcoin, the asset. They understand the protocol. They understand the benefits of the asset itself. But then there's also some that come to us that they don't know anything about Bitcoin. They don't necessarily care. They come to Lightning because it's it has these properties of instant settlement, near zero transactions. It's a global network. All of these things where they can say, hey, if I applied this to my business, we can save $10 million, $100 million a year in like transaction processing or things like that. And so the efficiency gains are what a lot of people are very, very interested in. And so, we're looking at doing things with customers of like more like the global settlement. So maybe it's a bank or a service provider that has, relationships across the world, and they're doing international settlements across banks, which is very costly and very slow. And so if they can, use Bitcoin to transact from one bank to the other, that cuts costs and it cuts time to resolution, significantly. And so using it as a back end system to some existing services, and maybe the end user of their product doesn't know anything about Bitcoin. They still transact in fiat, whatever it is. And they're just using Bitcoin in that back end to facilitate more efficient operations. We're seeing some of that. And we're also seeing people coming to Bitcoin Lightning and wanting to integrate with the protocol like more natively, of like surfacing it to the users, being able to participate more in like that value for value context and like the creator tools and things like that, as well as just trying to add it as an option for payment processing. Like I think that there's a lot of people that have wanted to add in Bitcoin and Lightning as a way of reaching a broader audience. If you only can transact in USD, not everyone always has USD. So if they would enable just Bitcoin alongside it, you reach more of an audience. There's more people out there that might have Bitcoin that don't have USD. And so we see it in that context as well.
Okay, Graham, I want to ask you a bit of a random question here, but I'm sure you have hundreds or even thousands of companies in your funnel in terms of companies that you want to target and you're trying to sell your product to. Within that funnel, or even in terms of choosing the companies that you're targeting, if you could share with us which company or company type are the furthest away from Bitcoin that you're actually willing to target. And for example, I'm thinking about, let's say, a fast food restaurant chain. They're not necessarily a technology company. It's a pure retail, small, transaction size, $10 per transaction. Let's say it's a global chain, so stores all over the world. What type of companies are you willing to reach out to target that are outside Bitcoin, outside payments, and even outside the traditional banking sector?
Yeah, no, that's interesting, and I think that us as an organization, I mean, we're very interested in just talking with people, even like McDonald's. If they're like, hey, what do we do for like Bitcoin Lightning strategy? We'll talk to them about it, and like, whether we're the right provider or it's the right time or whatever, we'll evaluate that. But so like conversations, we're here for all of it, right? And so very interested in that. But I think more specifically, we're very focused on, I think that the first movers are like the fintechs, like the more banking level folks. And I think the farther out, I think that your example is very, very good on like maybe brick and mortar like franchises or something, or maybe the farthest out, or in that context, like they use it in a different way or something. Maybe it's more of like that back end banking system that where they integrate it first, and then like rolling it out to like literally every location or something like that is maybe the last to go. So I think that we see that, but I guess like the flip side of that is like Lightning is kind of, people like to think about it as like, the thing you're going to use to like buy the cup of coffee or like, your cheeseburger or whatever. And like, that's totally possible. And so I think that it's sort of like that goes into like the chicken and the egg problem of like, okay, we need more people to be willing to pay, and then we need the source to, accept it, and like all of these things. So I feel like that's going to take a little while to like for that to all unravel. And so like, thinking about more conversely of like, the fintechs, the banking sector are all like, can have the use case today and like can benefit from it today. And I think that, people like to think of Bitcoin as like, this bank killer, like it's the thing that's gonna like obsolete all banks or something. And like, maybe in 100 years, 50 years, I don't know, whatever, like maybe that'll be a reality. But I think in the more immediate term, a lot of like the banking folks like in that sector are very interested in leveraging it. They're kind of, I think, of the viewpoint of like, we're either gonna like add this we're gonna support this either like user facing or in the back end or something like that, or we're going to get left behind. Like we're going to get left behind by this new technology, and so we need to have a strategy for it. So I think that so it's kind of maybe like a little deviation from like your initial question, but I think that brick and mortar is probably a little slower than where we can see some immediate like efficiency gains inside of fiat and payment processing types.
And I think it's relevant to know who you guys are targeting, because for the audience that is wondering, well, what type of companies are adopting Lightning Network today? Graham's here telling us that brick and mortar retail is not really on the radar. It's not part of what he's targeting at the firm. They're targeting fintech, they're targeting Bitcoin companies, so that we can actually bring in people using this infrastructure, understand actually that Lightning provides this instant settlement network, and you don't necessarily even have to use Bitcoin. And we have Strike that maybe started this concept or started popularizing this concept as a way to use Lightning Network out in the real world. Now, Graham, I want to ask you another question about Lightning Network evolution. You talk about the interest of companies. We're citing growing numbers on the number of channels, number of nodes, total Bitcoin capacity in Lightning Network. But then my question here comes back to the adoption curve and where we are today. From my perspective, I think that Lightning Network is at a place where I do believe we've hit the point of no return, in that the network effects driving Lightning Network forward are very strong from multiple directions, so as to give me the sense that it's not going to stop, and that it might follow an adoption path similar to Bitcoin, maybe more shallow and many years lagging, but that the adoption path will mirror the Bitcoin network itself. How would you respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think about it in much of the same way. I think that we are past the point of like no return, and like even when I kind of mentioned previously about some like the UX hurdles and things like that, I think that we're only going to get better as a protocol. We're only going to add more features, more capabilities, all of these things inside of things like that aren't even in reality yet, of things like splicing of Bolt 12, like for the most part. For async payments, like there's so many more like technical improvements that can happen inside of the Lightning Network protocol that we're not gonna stay stagnant, or we're not gonna go back in terms of what the technology can do. And so I think that if we've seen what it can do so far, and then we're going to be improving it, I think that is like the ultimate kind of bull case for it is like it's only gonna get better from here, which means that we're only going to see more and more adoption as we go. So I think that definitely agree with you on like we're past the point of it kind of going away. I think that we're going to continue, and I think that it's actually going to maybe pick up velocity over time. I think as we start to see these these fintech, like more people that are kind of in the exploratory phase today, once they actually start like putting this into production, using it for real, and then we pair that with the technology advances, I think that opens up significant room for growth ultimately.
Can you give any shout outs to either devs or companies or even business development folks that represent Lightning Network and the growth path, maybe some of the technical innovations that you're excited about? Who can you shout out here for us?
Yeah, that's there's a long list to that. I feel like, I mean, there's a lot of people working on like really interesting things out there, and they're all like at different angles, right? Like Dusty has done a great job in like the splicing context. There's like Mutiny Wallet, which is going to be something that's being developed. It's going to be a great kind of personal wallet. There's people like Sonoda who are doing like energy settlement inside of Bitcoin, or using like Lightning for energy settlement. Vita for like video and things like that. So like there's a huge amount of lists from like the lowest level of protocol improvements all the way up to like people that are making very interesting new things on top of the protocol, or like surfacing it to the end user. And so I think that all of the implementations like have been doing a great job too, of like Lightning Labs and Blockstream and Spiral with like LDK. And so I think that there's a huge amount of work being done from like every layer of the stack, from like protocol up to the end user. And so I think that I could probably like sit here for an hour calling out everyone specifically, but I think that ultimately there's a lot of people working very diligently on enabling the things that need to happen for this to be like it's already usable today, to make it like the easiest thing that could possibly be done, and the coolest thing as far as like what we can enable with it. And so I think that there's huge amounts of things happening that are hard to call out each and every one, but I guess like those are just a few.
Graham Krizek from Voltage, CEO and founder, we really appreciate your insights today, and we feel privileged to take a peek inside the Lightning Network from an industry perspective and an enterprise solution perspective, because it gives us a sense of where the network is in its adoption path, and where the network is in terms of the real people, Bitcoin users, actually requiring the Lightning Network to send financial transactions. And as you note, it's not just Bitcoin companies. Fintech companies themselves can be leveraging the Lightning Network in a non-Bitcoin environment to settle money. So Graham, thank you for joining us. Please give the audience where they can find you and your work online.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me. You can find me on Twitter. My handle is like @GKRIZEK. Our website is voltage.cloud. So just go to voltage.cloud. Our Twitter is voltage_cloud. So follow us, reach out if you have any questions or anything that we can do to help you. And ultimately, if you no matter where you're at, business owner or just working inside of a business, I think that Lightning can apply across the board. And so I would, feel free to reach out and like evaluating what is your Lightning strategy. I think it all starts with the use case and the product. And so happy to work through that with people and, figure out how can this apply to you.
Great. Thank you, Graham, for joining us today at the Bitcoin Layer.
Yeah, thank you.
The Bitcoin Layer is brought to you by Passport, a Bitcoin hardware wallet that you already know how to use. It has a gorgeous design, very sleek and form-fitting, fits right in the hand, has a directional pad, and frankly, you'll know how to use this the second you pick it up. Guys, if you've been putting off taking your Bitcoin off exchanges for any reason to this point, this is the device that you have to get. You can get it today at thebitcoinlayer.com/foundation, and you can get an additional $10 off when you use code BitcoinLayer. Thanks so much for watching the video. We'll talk to you guys soon.